Good morning. They took the gavel away from me. I was using it too much, so I'll have to bang on something. But I'll now call the board meeting to order. And before I begin, I would like to ask everyone to silence your cell phone, please. Thank you. I would also like to ask if you're going to address the board, please come to the microphone and identify yourself and your institution, your title. I appreciate that. And at this time, I will ask the Finance Chairman to take the meeting over.
Thank you, sir. We'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order, and we have several agenda items. We'll start right in with agenda item, action item number 6, the economic feasibility of loan issue for Henderson State University. This will begin on page 6-1 of our agenda book. Mr. Nick Fuller, will you provide us with the background for this item?
So agenda item number 6 is the economic feasibility of a bond issue for Henderson State University. This bond will be for $1 million with a term of 3 years at a rate not to exceed 5.25%. This bond is for auxiliary purposes, and the funding will be from auxiliary revenues. Proceeds from the bond will issue will be used to fund renovation of the Smith Hall residence facilities. And ADHE staff recommends the approval of the.
Are there any questions? Do I hear a motion to recommend to the full board approval of the economic feasibility of loan issue for Henderson State University?
So moved.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Next action item number 7, the economic feasibility of loan issue for Arkansas Tech University. That'll be on page 7-1 of the agenda book. And I believe, Mr. Fuller, you have this as well.
Yes. All right. This bond issue for Arkansas Tech will be for $1.1 million with a term of up to 15 years at a rate not to exceed 2.44%. This issue will be for educational and general purposes with revenue funding through tuition and fee revenues. Proceeds from this loan will be used to finance an energy performance project, which includes campus-wide energy improvements to include HVAC controls and lighting. And ADHE staff recommends approval of the resolution.
Are there any questions on action item number 7? Do I hear a motion to recommend to the full board action item number 7? Second? Thank you. We'll move right along to action item number 8. Nick, you're just up here all day, aren't you?
All morning.
Wonderful.
All right, so action item number 8 is the operating recommendations for the 2019-2021 biennium. The recommendations are for state operating levels of appropriation and funding for the institutions of higher education. The recommendations are based on productivity funding recommendations for the formula entities, as well as current estimates for Educational Excellence Trust Fund and Workforce 2000 funding. Non-formula recommendations are based on a 1.8% continuing level increase above the current funding levels for those entities, as well as any program enhancement requests submitted by the institutions after review by ADHE staff. ADHE recommends a funding increase of approximately $29 million for all entities. $7.4 million of this is from the productivity funding distribution, with the remaining coming from non-formula entity recommendations. And the productivity funding distribution will be go into more detail on that later in the full committee meeting. ADHE is also recommending an additional 2% spending authority increase to all funding recommendations within the productivity funding model. This is to account for any fluctuations within the forecast for the special revenues that are included in state appropriations, which would be the Educational Excellence and Workforce 2000 funds. Since we're using current year forecasts for those revenues, in the event that the actual forecast comes in higher, we wanted to be able to have the institution to have the extra spending authority already in place. So this is just 2% above the funding recommendation for spending authority. So the total summary on chart on table A shows the total recommendation for appropriations for the formula entities of $637 million, with $7.4 million of that coming from new funds based on the productivity index. For the non-formula entities, is total recommendation of $230 million, with $21 million coming from the 1.8% continuing level, as well as any program enhancements that the institutions ask for. This chart is really hard to see if you're looking at the screen, but this shows the base level funding in the white columns for each institution. This is 2-year on the first chart. Then the productivity recommendation distributions within the blue columns to get to the total funding recommendation in the first column in the green, and then adding the 2% spending authority adjustment on top of that to come up with the total recommendation from ADHE in the final column. So this table D is the 2-year colleges. Table C is the 4 years. And then the non-formula entities, their columns look a little different without the productivity included, but it has in the white is again the base funding for the current year. Then the first column is the 1.8 continuing level increase. Any program enhancements are listed in the second green column for the total recommendation. And so ADHE staff recommends approval of the resolution. Any questions?
I do have questions on this. You
Sure.
and I talked offline just a little bit. I wanted to make sure that I have correct in my head just a few things.
Okay.
So our total recommendation here, can you give me an estimate of the difference of what we projected and what we are recommending right now in this action item?
From what we projected,
Yes.
from the current year funding, we're projecting to need around an additional $860,000 total for the productivity side of funding for the institutions. Now, on the non-formula, the $21 million increase, we've had similar requests and recommendations in the past. It's been a few years since additional funding has been added to meet those programs. So the funding for those institutions have remained flat for quite a few years. But the $21 million is about in line with prior years.
What we normally request, but not generally what
What is
has been
funded, correct.
And then, just for my own sake, I was reviewing what are all non-formula entities. I know UAMS, I know math and science.
Sure.
Agri,
Yes.
and then research arms of different institutions. Is there any other major entities out there that go into the non-formula entities?
The system offices for the 2 systems, those are included in that. The ad tech, I guess, the acronyms are listed on that chart, but that's all of them listed there. But most of it is the research arms. The pieces of the institutions that do not generate FTEs.
Wonderful. And then my final question that we talked a little bit about offline, just to make sure I understood last night in our special meeting.
Sure.
I thought we put up a definition of what was STEM and what is now STEM, and we saw that just by changing the definition, we had an increase in STEM enrollment just by changing the definition. I believe that has been taken into account in this new productivity model. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and when we reevaluated the data, we did it for all of the years included in the formula. So there won't be a jump in middle years. So all of them are factored in from the beginning once we did the first year of the funding. That definition was included as well.
Wonderful. Those were all my questions. Are there any other questions? Do I hear a motion to recommend action item number 8 to the full board?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. We'll move on to action item number 9. And Mr. Fuller, you're still up.
All right. And action item number 9 is the personal services recommendations for the 1921 biennium for institutions. And line item maximum salary increases were considered for this biennium. All line item maximums for the non-classified positions were adjusted by 1.8%. And then and salary recommendations for any new positions were based on salaries for similar positions previously established at other institutions. So for the institutions, there are a total of 19,355 positions currently authorized, excluding UAMS. And ADHE staff recommends an increase of 175 positions total for those institutions. So this represents a 0.9% increase in positions for a total of 19,530. And this does include all classified and non-classified positions. With the change in the last session, with ADHE taking over the oversight of the classification system for institutions, all of those approvals come through our office rather than OPM making recommendations on the classifieds. So, and then with UAMS itself, they had a net new position request total of 254 positions. And ADHE staff is recommending an increase of 84 of those 254 for a total increase at UAMS, or for a total count at UAMS of 8,885. And ADHE staff recommends approval of the resolution.
Do I hear a motion to recommend to the full board approval of action item number 9? Oh, no, wait, any questions? Any
Yes.
other questions? I'm jumping ahead. Do I have that motion? Thank you. Action item number 10, Mr. Fuller.
Action item number 10 is the capital funding request for institutions. And Arkansas Higher Education has a current replacement value for E&G space of approximately $5.3 billion. And over 50% of the useful life of campus facilities has been expended. There was a total request from institutions of $1.06 billion requested for construction, renovation, and technology infrastructure. And over $2.7 billion is needed for deferred maintenance and $244.2 million for critical maintenance on the campuses. A total of $251.25 million is recommended by ADHE staff for all projects, $148.5 million for renovation, construction, technology infrastructure, $24.4 million for critical maintenance, $54.94 million for deferred maintenance, and $23.3 million for equipment and library holdings. And this is in line with recommendations that were made in the past biennium. And so ADHE staff recommends approval of the resolution. Any questions?
Any questions?
So out of $1 billion, we're recommending $251 million?
Yes, sir.
So
For-
when you get on down the road, is that going to bite us?
Well, in the current biennium, there hasn't been funding for, and with the change in the one-time funds from having the big pot of one-time general improvement funds to the one rainy day fund now, there's really the pot of money to be able to distribute to everyone across the state has dwindled down very small. So, like I said, we had certain dollar amounts for each level of schools to allocate for the different projects, and we use that same level for each as we did in the past biennium.
I mean, I'm not arguing that point, but I mean, if we're only, as a state,
Sure.
funding
Yeah, we're not meeting the
or not
maintenance
meeting
needs.
yeah,
Sure.
to
Yes, sir.
maintain what we have.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Sam. Our final action item, Mr. Fuller, you give us the background on that, action item
Sir.
number 11?
Yep. This is the certification of budgeted revenues and expenses for the 18-19 fiscal year, which is the year that we just started this month. So this first slide shows the athletic fees per student semester credit hour that each of the institutions plan to charge this year. And you see the ones in red are increases over prior years. So all but 2 institutions, one of them being one that does not charge a fee at all, have increases for the current year. And then the second slide is a summary of the different revenues and where those would be generated from for each of the institutions. And this is just a report of the budgeted revenues for the current year of each of those institutions. And ADHE staff recommends the approval of the resolution.
Are there any questions on action item number 11? Do I hear a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the review of the certification of intercollegiate athletic budgets for 18-19?
Thank you for the emphasis on that word, and I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Do I hear a motion? Is there any other business to be brought before us? I think we were just 6 through 11. Is that correct? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second. Thank you. Dr. Allen, we'll turn it back over.